Revolutionary Guard quietly unveiled a once-secret strategic missile base along the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend. Now, this ramps up tensions between Iran and Israel as Iran blames the recent assassination of a top scientist on Israel. So how does all of this shape up just days ahead of a U.S. inaugurating a new president? Here to discuss, former Pentagon official Mike Maloof is here. So lots of stuff happening on the Iranian front. Mike, first, what do you make of this big reveal of this underground missile base along the Strait of Hormuz? This is something the Israelis are viewing as a provocative step. What do you think?
Well, I think it was Iran's way of saying that given the concern that they have between the 6th and the 20th of January that Trump might do anything, including an attack on Iran, it was sort of a show of force that to remind the United States that they're capable of hitting U.S. assets in the region. So, and they are capable of that, since there are 34 bases that ring Iran, basically. And but Israelis will say anything against Iran, of course, because they want the Islamic government to be kicked out and replaced. But the reality is that the Iranians have informed the United States as well as Israel that any attack on them will be met with force, and that has been somewhat of a deterrence because they know that Iran is capable of inflicting severe damage, even on allies, even on countries such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, in the region.
Yeah, that could be bad, Mike. But speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has just seized a South Korean tanker along with a crew of 20 aboard as they entered the strait. Iran says they stopped the tanker due to environmental pollution, but others say this is retribution or even ransom, since South Korea is holding up $7 billion in Iranian assets in their banks because of U.S. sanctions. So how do you see that shaken out?
Well, I think that's a very dangerous precedent on the part of Iran to take that approach, because any seizure of a ship on the high seas is automatically regarded as piracy under international law for whatever reason. And that, of course, did activate U.S. Military to do closer surveillance. They flew some additional B-52s over near Iran, I should say, near Iran, and as a show of force in case this was another episode of seizures. But I think it did grab the attention of that aside. It did grab the attention of South Korea to get its diplomatic channels open to discuss whatever grievance they might have to discuss this issue. I understand that South Korea is holding money that they believe is owed, but that needs to be handled through a different channel. You don't seize other people's properties like that, and particularly ships on the high seas, which create, in effect, a condition for open warfare, and it is a dangerous precedent, and that's something they've got to be careful about.
Yeah, it's at the very least, Mike, it's really bad optics on their part, especially trying to come back to the table for the Iran nuclear deal, which President-elect Joe Biden has already signaled that his administration is keen to move the U.S. back into the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that was obviously under Obama. Controversial former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has criticized that move, saying this will actually help proliferate nukes across the Middle East. I mean, how so? Isn't this deal to stop precisely that?
Oh, I don't know why Kissinger said that, because frankly, the deadlines in the JCPOA have just about expired, and to go back to the old nuclear agreement is almost a non-starter. And this is what the incoming Biden administration is suggesting, is that they update it, but the flip side of the problem is that Iran no longer trusts any agreements it makes with the United States, no matter who's in office. If it's not a treaty, as opposed to an agreement, the Iranians have experienced the fact that even though they were in compliance with that agreement, that the U.S., under, like we saw with Donald Trump, can just break it unilaterally without any fanfare or notice. At least with treaties, you have a period, a grace period for discussion, and then the two sides agree to vacate if they choose to do so. But that wasn't the case with the agreement. And in fact, any agreement, even if Biden were to attempt to try to do something, will still have opposition in Congress, because the original JCPOA also had problems of getting agreement within the Congress, because there really was no agreement. Congress really didn't want it. And so they may run into that again. I think it's going to be very, very touch and go in any future relationship that the United States might have with Iran after the experience with Donald Trump over the past 4 years, because they also know that Donald Trump could come back.
Well, I guess we will see, Mike, in about a little over a week.
Yes.
We'll see how this shakes out.
Yes.
Mike Maloof, good of you to join us. Thank you.
Right, thank you.